If you're a recruitment firm that's running cold outbound, or you're looking to grow your pipeline by adding cold outbound in the future, then you need to build a list of people to contact. Let's say you build that list, maybe you buy it somewhere or you scrape it. The problem you're going to face is that essentially anybody can get the exact same list that you can, which means you don't really have a competitive edge in reaching out to these people. Now, to gain that competitive edge, what you need is more than just a list. You need further information about why somebody on that list might matter, how you could actually provide value to them, why it would make sense to reach out to them. These are things that we call signals. And with these signals, you can actually intelligently reach out to people and get them to respond to you because the reason that you're reaching out is something that is actually of value to them. And with the right kind of system built around these signals, you can actually automate this entire process at scale. That's what I want to walk through with you on this video. Essentially, I want to show you a process of using signals to greatly improve the effectiveness of your cold outbound. I call it signal-led client acquisition. So I'm going to walk you through an example of signal-led client acquisition now. We're going to use a recruitment firm as our avatar for this. We're assuming this recruitment firm specializes in back-end platform and data engineer placements. And they're looking for B2B software companies with 40 to 250 people that have recently raised around a 5 mil to 25 mil. And we're going to be watching Bowhurst as the source of information for this. So to start out, we have a signal that's been detected. 12 million pounds Series A was just raised by this B2B software company. They've got 120 employees, so within our ICP. And the signal happened one day ago, so it's very fresh. You can see here the status is under review, which means we're just going to put this into a process of checking. So the first part in a signal-led client acquisition system is about finding them first. So this is once the signal happens, what are we doing, right? We have to verify the signal, make sure that it's actually within what we're looking for. Then we want to confirm the company fit, check that they are not in our exclusion list. Then we actually want to research the company and find the correct decision maker at that company. So for example, we have this B2B software company who just raised a 12 million pound Series A. But how do we make sure that these people are actually worth reaching out to? So the way we would do that is by automating the process of confirming company fit, checking for exclusions, researching the company, and then finding the right decision maker in the company. And a workflow like this is something that would run underneath. You can see here at the start, once the signal fires from Bowhurst, we're actually logging that first into the database, and we're going to see more on that later. Once we've logged into the database, we want to check to see if this person is actually worth contacting. Now, if they're not worth contacting, then we're going to log that in the database, just saying they're not a fit. If they are worth contacting, then we're checking the CRM to see whether this person actually exists there already or not. If they exist and they need to be excluded, we're logging that into the database. If they don't exist, then we're sending them to be enriched. So we're then pulling their contact details for the right person. And then once we've actually pulled the contact details for the right person, we send them back into the CRM to log them as a contact. And now they're actually ready for outreach. So I've shown you how the system automates the process from picking up that signal all the way to finding the right person to contact. Now, the next thing that we're going to want to do is actually reach out to this person. But in order to do that, we want to first establish what this person needs. Because really, what we're aiming to do is to get this person onto a booked meeting and ideally to close them from that booked meeting. And in order to close these calls, you need to provide real value. The best way to do that is to understand what are their needs and to match those to what can your recruitment firm actually provide for their needs. And so that's what the next part of the system is about, giving them a reason to answer to the outreach that we're sending. Now, because we need to do this at scale, the system has to be able to automate building relevance, adding value, sending the outbound messaging, and then following up with that person to make sure we maximize the chances that we actually get them on a booked call. We would have an automation like this sitting beneath it. You can see here that once a high fit company is logged into the database, this would pick it up. And then it would just log them in the CRM to let the CRM know that the lead is starting to be worked. The next thing we're doing here is we're actually building that relevance. So we're using an enrichment tool like Clay. Maybe we're looking at their LinkedIn profile to see what did they say they're going to do with the 12 million funding they raised, right? And we're logging all that information back into the database. If there isn't enough relevance, we're going to set them back to the watch just to keep watching them. If there is, then we want to build that value and kind of just see, okay, how does what our recruitment firm does connect to what their current need is? And once we have that, we're essentially ready to build the messaging. So the system also builds the messaging, logs everything into the database and HubSpot, and then sends it to the outbound tools. So you might be using a tool like SmartLead or Instantly if it's cold email, maybe HeyReach if you're doing LinkedIn outbound automations. And the next section here is called Give It Enough Chances, which is just about actually doing enough follow-ups to make sure that we're optimizing the likelihood that this person will reply positively. Now, once we get a positive reply, this is the point at which the system logs into the HubSpot, logs into the database, but then actually hands that off to a human. Because once interest has been shown, this is where we actually want a human in the loop to make sure we're nurturing that interest all the way to a booked meeting. Now I'm going to give you an example of the type of message that the system might craft in this outbound. The outreach would look something like this. Hi, first name. Congratulations on the 12 million Series A. So we're using the signal there. I saw the plans to take the product into new markets. That kind of expansion could put platform capacity under pressure. So this is where we're using that relevance to really talk about their needs. We help B2B software teams add those engineers without slowing delivery. This is where we're introducing the value that we actually provide based on their need. Is that something you're planning for this year? So you can see with this type of automated system doing this at scale, we're sending potentially thousands of these high value, high relevance messages out every single day to people within our ICP that we have researched. We found that these people have a relevant need. We found how we can provide the value, and we're sending them a message that gives them a reason to actually respond. Now let's take a look at a positive reply. So let's say we get a reply like, thanks for reaching out. We're still working through the hiring plan, but backend capacity is likely to be a priority. Happy to have a conversation. Once this positive reply comes in, this is where the system hands it off to the recruiter. And the importance behind this is that now there's a real opportunity at stake. We don't want an automated system replying back to them with generic template messages. We want a real human nurturing this opportunity all the way through to a call booking. That brings me to the third part of the system, which is about getting them on the call. So once the system hands this off to a real person to nurture that opportunity, it's not just going hands off from there. The system actually helps to get that call all the way to the book stage. So it classifies the reply, assigns the right person on the team, delivers the full context. So a brief about what are the signals, why this person, why now, why are we reaching out to them, and what is the value that we're looking to provide to them. And then sending out reminders to the lead to make sure they actually get on that call. So the system handles the repetition, the recruiter owns the relationship. Now, the result of that is that you go into this call with the full context on how they match our ICP, what the signal was, who they are, and what their role is, and what's the value we're actually able to bring to this lead. So we would have a workflow like this one sitting underneath the get them on the call part of the system. So this automation picks up the second that there is a positive reply. It's logging it to the database as always. And once we log it to the database, we're making sure that we route it to the correct person on the team. We're updating it in the CRM. And that's when the system actually hands over that context, the full brief of all the details that the recruiter needs to know to be able to go into this call fully prepared. And once they actually take over, we have booking assistance automations, logging every single event back to the CRM and the database, sending out reminders, regularly to make sure that that person ends up on the call. And if for some reason the meeting wasn't attended, we are sending that lead to a recovery sequence instead of just letting the opportunity die there. Then we're logging everything back to the database too. If the meeting was attended, we're updating that in the database and the CRM. So now the system has automated the full process from finding that signal, verifying it, doing the research on the lead to be able to actually craft that highly relevant, high value, signal backed outbound messaging, and then assisting the recruiter in capturing interest and turning that into a booked meeting. So the real deliverable of this system is a qualified client meeting that actually happens. Now, the last part of the system, which essentially has been running the whole time, is about tracking everything. So we want to track every single event that happens. We want to track the signal event. We want to track the research. We want to track any false positives. We want to track any contact details. We want to store all of these in our database. And the reason that tracking is so important is because with tracking everything over time, we can actually make this system more intelligent. And this is just intuitive because the more signal to booking cycles that your system goes through, the more that it's going to be able to actually predict what kind of signals tend to lead to bookings. And so tracking everything is an essential part of the system. So these are the core parts of a signal-led client acquisition system. If you want to build your own, these are the core steps. You want to start by defining your ICP, choosing what signals are relevant to you, picking which sources to watch those signals on, setting clear fit rules so you know how to filter people out. You want to make sure that you automate your research so that you're able to do this at scale. Then make sure that you're also finding the right decision maker, also using automations. And then crafting relevant outbound that makes sure you give people an actual reason to respond. And then lastly, just tracking every single outcome so your system becomes more intelligent over time. We do a managed version of this system at Sunrise. We call it our recruitment client engine. And essentially, we build and run the system for our clients end to end. So all they have to do is actually show up to the booked meetings and close deals. The system is so reliable that we don't even charge a monthly retainer. They only pay us when somebody actually shows up to a booked call. Now, if you're running a recruitment firm and you want to see what a system like this might look like in your business before having to spend money on building one, we'll build you an instant reply system absolutely free of charge that will capture interest through your inbound channels the second it lands, send an instant personalized reply, hand it off to the correct person on your team, and make sure they have the full context to step in and close a call. So if that sounds like something you're interested in, it's a completely free gift from us. Just head over to sunrise.ai and you'll find it on our website.